Hello, this is SBNR or no SBNR, a title you will soon understand in a minute, the practice of Zen Buddhism, and I'm Christy Hay. For my spiritual but not religious field trip, I visited Mia Chung Temple in Salem, Oregon, where the Salem Zen Center holds weekly meditations. I attended the last two Tuesday sessions and left with two books rented from their free library, one sore back from my lack of sitting practice, and so much more than a simple meditation experience. So, in this presentation, I'll share how this Zen community embodies a hybrid SBNR spirit, anti dogmatic and experience based, like SBNR, yet grounded in lineage, traditional, ritual, and communal discipline, like religion. So I've lived down the street from the center for about 17 years, always curious about this striking red building. For a long time, it seemed empty until last year when something shifted, more people, more cars. So I really wanted to know more. My only other visit inside was in 2011 when a Bhutanese High Lama came from Bhutan and held ceremonies in Salem. I had gone for a graduate class project, but the experience went far beyond the assignment. So as the Lama entered, I felt this very palpable wave of energy move through the room from the front to the back. And then when later he playfully bonked my head after I offered the kata scarf during a blessing, and I burst into laughter and later tears. A photographer happened to capture that moment of shared joy between us. Since then, I remained a spiritual dabbler, drawn to mindfulness, yet often distracted. So, after opening my therapy practice in 2019, I have been passing the temple twice daily on the way to work and back home. So, when this assignment came up, I knew it was time to finally step inside. So here's the temple's meditation hall with the gold Buddhas, if you can see those all the way there at the front. And I remembered those from many years ago in my visit. And while Zen temples are often austere, muted colors, natural light, and never red carpets, this one carries a unique history. The century old building was once a house and a barn with a hayloft, and then later a church before becoming the Mia Chung Temple of Pure Land Buddhism in 2006. So in 2023, Master Li Chung of Taiwan gifted the building to the Salem Zen Center, an extraordinary gesture across traditions from a Pure Land master to a Zen Sangha led by Roshi Lian Koyan Nail, a local mental health therapist. So she noted how rare it was to receive such a gift, especially to a center led by a woman. And they have kept that interior as it is to honor their benefactors. At the end of a brief dokusan, or a private guidance session with Roshi Lian, I inquired about this weird head bonking experience many years prior. And then she smiled, rang her bell, and simply said, "Words, words, words." And so I took that as my indication to stand, bow, and then return to the meditation hall. So this map shows the three traditions from two different Buddhist schools. There are three that I've touched on. Tibetan Buddhism is there on the bottom right with the High Lama, Pure Land Buddhism on the left, and then Zen below that, that goes on into Japan lineage. So with all this lineage and structure, my visit might sound much more like it's spiritual than or religious than spiritual, yet the experience felt deeply personal, quiet, embodied, and a little mysterious. So in true Zen fashion, I left with my own koan to carry, a puzzle to still ponder rather than a clear answer to my question. So here is a quote from Alan Watts, a counterculture era philosopher and writer who helped popularize Zen Buddhism and Eastern philosophy in the West. So in Zen, when you're asked a question about religion, you reply in terms of the secular. And when you're asked about something secular, you reply in terms of religion. So it's interesting to note that Jeffrey Kripal is referenced at least twice of our two times in our required readings as writing a book called The Religion of No Religion, which is actually Esalen America and the Religion of No Religion, about the history of the Esalen Institute. Yet long before Kripal's book, Religion of No Religion was the title of a 1965 lecture series by Alan Watts during a tour of his in Japan. The talks, available in audio and book form, explore Zen's fluid boundary between the sacred and secular. Watts said, "The completely bodhisattva type of person doesn't leave any track, either by being religious overtly or by being non-religious overtly. How will you be neither religious nor non-religious? See, that's the great test." Before we look at Zen in relation to the SBNR framework, let's define the term bodhisattva that Alan Watts used. In Mahayana Buddhism, a bodhisattva is someone who awakens to truth yet remains in the world out of compassion, vowing to help all beings realize that same awakening. So central to this vision is the teaching of the Buddha nature, the idea that every one of us holds the seed of enlightenment. So Zen practice is simply uncovering that through innate clarity and direct experience. So this slide shows a quick overview of Zen, beginning in the 6th century as Chan, a blend of Mahayana Buddhism and Taoist simplicity, and later spreading across all of Asia and eventually across the globe. At its heart, it is about direct experience and awakening, and the practice centers on ordinary acts done with full attention. Goal is to simply realize our true nature. And then today, many of the practitioners integrate Zen into psychology and social justice. So the story of Zen in America closely parallels the rise of the spiritual but not religious movement. In 1893, Zen first entered the American conversation when Soyin Shaku spoke at the World's Parliament of Religions in Chicago. Sound familiar? His student and translator D.T. Suzuki later became one of the most influential interpreters for Western readers. So in 1905, Nyogen Senzaki arrived in California and began teaching without a temple, calling his gatherings floating zendos. And during World War II, he was sent to a Japanese internment camp in Heart Mountain, Wyoming. Yet he continued to teach there, modeling Zen's resilience and adaptability, even despite terrible circumstances. By the 1960s, teachers like Shunryu Suzuki, pictured here, introduced Zen to the counterculture, where its simplicity and emphasis on direct experience appealed to seekers with disillusioned with institutions. And then in recent decades, Zen has grown much more inclusive, with women, BIPOC, and LGBTQ teachers shaping communities. And with such cultural and historical ties, Zen in America definitely embodies key SBNR values. So, looking at the SBNR themes we've explored, Zen connects in subtle but striking ways. From Fuller and Parsons, Zen echoes the SBNR shift towards direct experience over doctrine. It parallels the countercultural search for authenticity that made Zen so appealing in the West. Josephson Storm's idea of an enchanted modern world fits perfectly. Zen doesn't reject the mystical, but neither is it seen as something extraordinary. It's simply seeing things as they are, without the filters of thought or self. And then Urban's view of New Age spirituality as decentralized and individualistic shows both overlap and tension. Zen shares the experiential freedom and focus on transformation, but it stays anchored in their traditions. So the donated gold Pure Land Buddhas here at the front of the Zen Center feel almost like religious idols, so ornate that they seem to contradict the simplicity. Yet that discomfort can also be revealing. There's an old Zen saying, if you meet a Buddha on the road, kill the Buddha. It's a reminder to not cling to any image or idea of awakening. In that sense, these statues aren't idols at all. They're mirrors reflecting the Buddha nature that's already inside of each of us. So while Zen appears spiritual but not religious, it still carries the architecture of religion. Its lineage, its rituals, and its teachings guide ethical and spiritual growth. The Sangha is the community, and then the temple itself becomes the consecrated space with lots of bowing. So in these ways, Zen mirrors traditional religion, even as it invites a deeply personal experiential path. And then at the same time, Zen resists the boundaries of organized religion. It's experience first, awakening through silence, movement, and presence rather than belief. Words and logic are set aside, so practice itself becomes the teaching. It's intentionally inclusive and open, feeling less like a religion and more like a shared human experience and awareness. I'm going to take a quick opportunity to tie this into my own therapeutic areas of interest. I'll also be presenting on Eric Fromm in our other class in a few weeks, so it's been fascinating to see how his work intersects with Zen. Fromm, through his connections with meditation, and D.T. Suzuki, seen here, saw a deep kinship between both forms, aiming at transformation through awareness, psychoanalysis by making the unconscious conscious, and Zen by seeing directly into one's true nature. Fromm noted a key difference. Psychoanalysis works through explaining things, while Zen practice awakes through directly experiencing things. As I read Fromm's work and engage in my own practice, I see the two paths share a single movement, from bondage to freedom, and then from sleeping to awakening. So here I've added a quote by Carl Jung from his foreword to D.T. Suzuki's book, An Introduction to Zen Buddhism, if you would like to pause and check that out. So upon reflection, Zen fits the SBNR framework through its experiential and pragmatic focus, offering practice over belief while keeping enchantment alive in modern life. So, like religion, it has lineage, teachers, ethics, and chants, yet it also resists dogma and creed, and it engages the mind, body, and senses at all at once, linking ancient tradition to today's mindfulness and therapeutic culture. It changes with the tides of humanity, yet maintains consistency through structure. So ultimately, Zen holds a paradox: personal freedom within a collective experience, non theistic practice that still feels sacred. So for now, I'll keep sitting zazen with that paradox and perhaps someday see things as they really are. I'll leave you with this final thought: a Zen proverb: the wag of a dog's tail is a sutra without words. For me, it's a reminder that awakening doesn't always arrive through silence or stillness. Sometimes it's found in simple joy, like my dog Ellie here, or my dog Otter before, in presence without explanation. Thank you.